This is Unpivot, the show for Excel and Power BI fans and anyone who likes chatting about data. I'm Wyn Hopkins.
I'm Mark Proctor.
I'm Sue Bays.
And my name is Chandeep Chhabra.
Yay.
Chandeep, welcome.
Yay.
Welcome to
Thank
the
you
show.
so much, guys.
Super excited because I'm no longer fourth. But more importantly, we've got Chandeep. I'm
Thank you,
a
guys.
huge fan. So I'm very excited.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Chandeep, give us a quick, where are you based? What's the day job? And then we'll get on with things.
Sure. I'm based about 30 kilometers from New Delhi. If you know the place, that's called Gurgaon. That's where I live. And I do training and consulting on Power BI and on Excel. That was actually a couple of years ago. Now I just make YouTube videos.
Okay, there you go. Full-time job.
Yeah, that's a full-time. YouTube is a beast. It just sucks everything out of you.
Yeah. And we've got, obviously, the elephant in the room is the congratulations to yourself for hitting the 100,000 subscribers, which is an awesome achievement.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Pretty cool. I was looking at it as well, and there's a website called Social Blade. I don't know if you know about it. You can put in people's YouTube channels and find out all the stats about them. So, always stalking other people, seeing how they're getting on. You got like 11.5 million views as well on top of the 100,000 subscribers, which is bonkers, right?
Okay, I'll have to check Social Blade then.
Yeah, 11.5 million, which is brilliant.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So how long did it take you to go from 1,000 to 100,000? Because I've reached 1,000.
Oh, congratulations, Sue.
Yeah, I'm really tough. But how long did it?
That's the hardest 1,000. So
is it? But 100,000 is just amazing.
Sure. So don't get me started on YouTube because we can just eat up an hour for YouTube itself.
Yeah,
but
I'm in.
You're in. Well, you and Mark have got heavy subscriptions as well, haven't you? You're both, very active.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you the story. I started the YouTube channel way back, like, I don't know, maybe 2015 or so. But I was not very sincere about posting on YouTube. Whatever came to my mind, whatever I felt like in the day, I just posted that. And somehow that grew to about 2,000 subscribers, maybe 3,000 in many, many years. So I think I took about 6.5, 7 years to get to 3,500. Then a suggestion came, like a notification came that you can turn on ads and start making money. And I said, maybe let's just wait. Let's just get to 5K because I was eligible. I had 100,000. I had 1,000 subscribers. I had gotten to that 4,000 hours of watch time kind of thing. So I still waited for 5K. But it's only after December 2020, I started paying attention to YouTube because COVID had hit and all the day job that I had, like back in the day, doing training and consulting, traveling across the country for different companies had all stopped. Like I had nothing else to do. So I said, okay, fine, I'll just make videos. And one thing led to the other thing led to the other. I think people are not very different in India than they are in other parts of the country, in other parts of the world. They have the same data problems. And people started subscribing, and then I then thought of taking YouTube pretty seriously, built a team around it, set some processes around it, and then it took from about let's say 5K to about 100K. It took me about 3.5, 4 years or so, 3.5 maybe.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All good. And I'm loving the challenges that you're doing as well. I know you did one with the Power Query head-to-heads. Nice little idea. And you did one with Mark.
Yeah, on the face of it, it looks like a challenge, but yeah, I mean, we just like friendly at the back.
Yeah. But I saw the one the other day with because you done like Mark, you done was it Chandu? There's Melissa and Rick the other day.
Melissa and Rick, I saw, yeah.
And like Melissa's formula firewall little function trick was just like, how does that work? blocking formula firewall by just turning that little helper parameter into a function. It's just a parameterless. How do you guys come up with this stuff? This is bonkers.
Yeah, I read about that the first time on in-case blog, but that was a really good trick. I had long forgotten about that.
Yeah. All sorts of stuff. What did you come up with, Mark, on that one? What was your little show-off trick?
I can't remember, to be honest, but I remember when, because me and Chandeep were at Excel Days, which was a conference in Bulgaria, and he leaned like in between sessions, he leans across to me and he just says, "Do you fancy doing a YouTube video where we challenge each other on Power Query tips?" And I went, "Yeah, okay." And then as soon as I said, "You're okay," I was like, "What have I done? What have I done? Is he stitching me up? Is this a plan? Is this to discredit me completely? I'll turn up my Power Query tips and be like, they're rubbish." And then he'll do like a whole load of amazing ones. So I was like, what do I do? So in the end, I came up with, and I thought, if he goes 7, right, I'm going to make sure I've got at least 9. So whatever he comes up with, I've got something I can up it, right? And then we get there and we start recording. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this. And then Chandeep says, if you can just record your screen as things are going, that means my editor's got a really good chance of getting a quality video. And my laptop, with recording my screen and streaming and trying to run Power Query, it was the slowest thing going. I didn't need to worry about my tips in the slightest. It was all about recording quality. And I was like, oh, this is an absolute disaster. But when it came to it, Chandeep's editor made it look like it was almost seamless. It looked smooth. I was like, I clicked refresh on that query, and me and Chandeep were both sat there for at least 3 minutes for something that was like 5 lines. Just because there was so much, like so many resources being consumed by Camtasia and by streaming. But Chandeep's team turning the rubbish that was into my presentation into something that looked like a quality challenge was good. So he definitely didn't stitch me up. He was in fact, he could have done, because he could have left in the bits where I'm going, this should be working, why is it not working? But he cut out all those bits, and he was incredibly kind to make me look like I was mildly competent.
What super character did you choose? We typically go with super characters, like a superhero or something. Which one did you choose?
I forgot this. This was awesome. No, you picked this for me, and I was Batman, and I was like, that is when people talk to kids about, what do you want to be when you grow up? My standard line is, when kids say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be this. My standard line is, I want to be Batman when I grow up. So the fact that I was Batman was just, that was epic.
Yeah, it was fun. It was so much fun. So I've been doing some kind of podcasts back in the day. I've done it with Wyn. I've done it with Chandu. I've done it with a couple of other people as well. But somehow people don't like long conversations about just Excel or something or the other. So I
you realize what podcast you're on, Chandeep? Yeah. just saying.
Yeah.
So I thought, let me just come up with like a better format or something, and maybe people can enjoy sitting back on the couch and watching tricks one after the other. And if it's useful, you might just open up a laptop or something and just do something as well. So, and that worked out really well. The first one that I did was with Oz, and then after that was Mark and Chandu, and then Rick and Melissa. Yeah, that was fun.
Really interesting. I just I think yourself, Mark, and quite a few other people, I've just seen sort of Rick and lots of other people actually, just their understanding of Power Query. They're really getting into the weeds and then getting into the functions, and you just see this sort of evolution of how people are sort of improving their knowledge of the nuts and bolts of how everything works, and getting these sort of solutions and free coding, typing rather than clicking the buttons. It's just really interesting to see how people are evolving along with this stuff.
I think it was very scary. The world knowledge of Power Query. Sorry, Chandeep, go on.
Sorry, I would say it was very scary for me at the start. The first time I looked into the advanced edit, and I said, "Oh my God, what the hell is that? That's like worms on the screen. I can't even understand the characters. There's like all the possible special characters of the keyboard on the screen. I'd never be able to do this." But then thanks to all the consulting work and the nasty data that I got, so one quote block after the other, I started putting pieces together, and I just got the hang of it. And of course, a big shout out to Imke, Ben Baudo, his blog, phenomenal blog.
Yeah. Those are the folks who are really leaders.
Sorry, Mark, you were saying something.
With Chris Webb as well, the leaders getting in there with the right in the niche, in amongst the weeds of it all. Impressive.
I was going to say that I think the world collective knowledge of Power Query, because you think, I mean, it's been around for over a decade now. And I think at the start there were the initial leaders, then everyone else who kind of followed. We really just read Ken Paul's book, and after that we were just fudging along, pretending we knew exactly how things worked. And just as people asked us questions, you're like, oh, I need to find that out, and then as you solve more things, you get deeper and deeper into it. And I think there has been, the people that we've mentioned, there has almost been a collective, almost uprising of knowledge of Power Query. And when I remember when the first time I used list.accumulate without having to refer to the reference document and everything else, I used it and I was like, oh man, I've got this sussed. And then on LinkedIn, I think it was Melissa then posted about how slow list.accumulate is, and you should use these alternative methods. And I was like, oh man, but I've only just grasped that. But I think if you're just one person on your own trying to push things, then it's difficult to get that progress. But when you've got several people who are tackling things in different ways, then I think that really helps to progress things. And you look at other people, and I look, oh, Melissa's well past what I know, Rick's well past what I know. But then I can pull out this little trick, and Rick or Melissa, I didn't know that. And you're like, yes. So everyone's got their techniques and methods. But I think that everyone kind of doing it publicly and sharing things helps. Some of the problem now is that there's so many old YouTube videos of here's how you can do this, and actually that's not the way that any of us would now do that. But at the time, that was the best way that we knew. And unfortunately, those videos still get clicks, and they still get likes, and they still get surfaced up. So that's the method that people continue to use, which is a bit of a problem with the staleness of YouTube and the internet and various other things.
Yeah, maybe. Do you happen to write code right off the formula bar or the advanced editor, or do you take help for the UI?
Me, it depends. If I'm just going to tweak something, it'll be in the formula bar. If I'm going to write something from scratch, I might, depending on what it is, I might record, I might do the steps that I need to do. Then I'll go into the advanced editor and tweak, and then add to the things that I need. Because there's no point writing out syntax if I know that the default syntax is going to generate is going to be fine, and then all I have to do is tweak something. So it depends what it is. If it's something small in the formula bar, otherwise I will use the steps and then go into the advanced editor and then change them and add steps and add all the logic and everything else.
I see.
Yeah, I'm probably the same. I tend to do both, really. Depending upon what I'm doing. But the bit for me that I found fascinating was Alex Powers did a 30-day query folding challenge, where he produced. It wasn't just answering the question, but it was making sure that it folded so that it was efficient. And that was something I found particularly interesting, because you want to make sure that your refresh rate is effective. Yes. And so I found that, and then Chris Webb's blogs where he showed how, I remember being at, I can't remember if it was SQL Bits or something, where he was showing how the engine actually works to calculate the time it takes to refresh. And I didn't realize that it started from the bottom up to work through the code, and that if you reference something, it doesn't just stop at that reference point, it's repeated each time. So I found that fascinating, not just how you can solve problems, but how you can solve problems efficiently, so that when you publish that it will refresh quickly. And then of course SQL Profiler to analyze the steps, because it's really difficult, isn't it, to work out which bit's the fastest, or which bit is holding things up. So that takes it into a different dilemma as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're into that optimization piece then, whether it be Power Query or DAX or anything like that.
Yeah.
You know, at the start, you're just crossing your fingers and hope it works.
Yeah.
Then you sort of start to like cut down 75 change type steps that you left in your code.
Yeah.
And then you slowly progress until you're like, running a profile, which I've never done actually, the profiling stuff. But
it's really cool. I went from
query.
Sorry,
go on.
Yeah, I went from having one query it was probably my longest query because I was creating a dimension field, and I waited until the end of this really convoluted step to create it. And then once I realized it goes from the bottom up, I did it at the start, and it just, it was quite remarkable how quickly it is. But it's quite easy to do. Phil Seamark did a blog on it, which is, yeah.
I don't put Phil C. Mark and easy in the same sentence very often, to be honest.
No, it was. He did it. I managed to do it. And with Chris Webb and Phil C. Mark. Yeah, we've got some more really exciting stuff in Power BI. I'll do that one in a minute.
I reckon we need to get into some news. News.
News.
What's news? All right. So little section we normally have. I don't know if you got any news from the last few weeks, Chandeep. If you want to kick us off, then anything you've seen or cool things you've done or other people have done?
It was my mother's birthday 2 days ago, and I took her to Mumbai for a trip. And I've been to Mumbai like 100 times, maybe more than that, but it's never as a tourist. So this time when I went to in Mumbai, we saw different tourist attractions like the Elephanta caves. We took a ferry. We went off to an island. We took some nice pictures there. It was a nice 3-day holiday, like a weekend off from work, just with my parents. Things that you typically never do with your parents. So that was nice.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
I, on the same lines, I had my brother visiting for the first. I've been in Australia for 18 years. This is the first time he's been over. And just being the tour guide in your own hometown. It was just really good. And the weather was perfect for him. And sometimes you're just fingers crossed when somebody's visiting. You just it's going to be the sunny week, and it's good. It's good fun.
Yeah. So that was from my side. That's the only thing.
Yeah, cool. Any other news, folks? Mark, Sue.
Running.
I've got three things.
Like yours then, Mark, because Sue said running, which isn't news. That's old news.
That's old news. I've got three things. First of all, number plate gate, which just to close the loop. To close the loop on number plate gate. So the police have arrested somebody and charged them with a variety of crimes. Unfortunately, while they think this person is the person who stole my number plate, there is a lack of evidence to actually charge them for stealing my number plate, because the evidence was my number plate went missing. I didn't see anything. That's the only evidence they're going on. So either way, I mean, they've said that they've closed it off. So number plate gate is now closed. We think the person has committed other crimes and is currently has been charged for those. So either way, sounds like a reasonable resolution.
Why would somebody steal the number plate?
Apparently, if you steal a number plate, you can then put it on a car that looks like your car. You can then just drive up to a petrol station, fill up your car, and then drive off. And therefore, they've then got a free tank of petrol, and your car is then you're the one that then gets in trouble. So you can also use it in various crimes and other things, and it all looks like it's your car rather than somebody else's.
Sure, so these are first world crimes. I mean, it doesn't happen in India.
So that's my first bit of news. My second bit of news was on Sunday on Saturday I decided I was going to do a lead up to Christmas with a Lambda function every single day on LinkedIn. So if you're interested in that, then find me on LinkedIn. We've got some interesting ones coming up. We've had some interesting ones so far. So that's hopefully people will learn from it. There's a whole lot of, you can just copy and paste the functions and use the ones you like. So that's worth taking a look at. And today I released the Wyn, our combined effort on the even easier than easiest dependent drop-down list, entirely easiest method in the whole world ever, easy method. Or whatever it happens to be called. So that's gone out today. So feel free to check that out. Yeah, combined effort between me and Wyn. Hopefully people will watch that one rather than my previous one, because this is now the even easier than easiest.
Why don't you both guys do a video together? Like how it started. Like this is just a video idea, and how it started off as whatever method, and then you improvised on it, and then Wyn improvised on it, and then you improvised on it. Like, and this is the final thing.
That pretty much sums up what happened. So I'll just publish that.
Yeah. Put it together and publish it.
No, actually, what I meant was actually doing it on the screen. Yeah.
We did discuss it, and then it was just sort of it didn't really, because of the nature of the way it was back and forth and stuff. It wasn't. I don't know. It's something we should consider.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's actually that interested about my geeky knowledge about range functions. So therefore, as much as I've been like, everyone should watch this, I'm not sure they will.
Hold on though, Mark. I watched your video that did come out the other day, which was the Excel's dirtiest secrets.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you discover that there's a 17th decimal point for certain numbers stored in the back end of Excel? So, where do you even discover that? And that's why two numbers didn't match.
So Alan Murray sent me, this is going back a couple of years, he sent me an email saying, I've got this customer, this client, and they've tried to look up and it doesn't work. Why is it not working? And so we occasionally will kind of ping problems to each other. So I had a look and I was like, that seems odd. So because I know how to look in the background of Excel to see what's going on, because you use that for various other techniques, I just thought I'll take a look. So I opened it up and I was like, that's interesting. It's a different number and it's not 15 digits. I think I then put something in the MVP email group, and Bill Gellan came back with, this is, it's been like this for years. It's shocking. So I think so I think it's just one of those things that once you discover it, you don't forget it, because it's like, why would that not work? But in all honesty, that was because I was planning on releasing the drop-down list video last Thursday, but then with it being Thanksgiving, I thought, well, I don't want to send out a really good video on a day when everyone's too busy eating turkey. So I thought I'll just do this filler video, right? I'll just chuck this out and people can watch it if they want. So that's my second most popular video ever, and I'm like, what? I don't understand how the algorithm works and decides that this is a really good video. But anyway,
it's intriguing. That's the reason why. The title is very intriguing. That's the reason why.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be that way, right? And interestingly, so the video I did 2 weeks ago was all about X lookup and array of arrays, like such a niche topic. And again, but because I picked a title that sounded interesting, loads of people watched that. But ultimately, that was part 2 to the previous week. So I got like 5,000 people watched the first week and 40,000 people watched the part 2 without any understanding of the context or how it works or anything. So yeah, there we go. So that's all my news. I'll stop talking now.
That's the power of title and thumbnails, and that's exactly how the entire media industry works. So they will put in a lot of thought and time on the titling of the article, of the video, whatever that is, disproportionate amount of time. What is going to be my first 6 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds of the video, and what is going to be the thumbnail and the title? Disproportionate amount of time thinking about that. And that's how it works. I mean, you just got lucky, Mark. That was a good title. Very, very, very good title.
It is one that sort of catches me, is that it's the videos that I just spend very little time on and don't think much about that end up doing the best. And the ones you sort of slave away and just get really perfect, just like, no one really, So what about you, Sue? Any news? You can talk about running if you like.
Yeah, I did a marathon, so that was quite cool.
Another marathon.
Yeah, thank you. Just
Where was that one?
That was a local one, so it was very rainy and very wet. But I love yoga as much as I love running, Chandeep, and I went to Goa last December, January. Yeah, I spent 2.5 weeks in Goa and just fell in love with India and the food. Although I know it was a very nice part of India, but it's just such a beautiful country.
What did you eat there in Goa?
just lots and lots of. I'm vegetarian, so just lots and lots of beautiful dals and stews,
The lentils,
and peas, and everything. It's just.
I see.
Yeah.
You should actually come to the northern part of India, and there are delicacies here that just based off the food, you would want to come back someday.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was.
It's that tasty. It is that tasty. Not that good for your stomach, although,
No.
or your health, that matter. But it's delicious.
It really was. It really opened my eyes, because in the UK we have vegetarian food, but it's sometimes quite a lot of it is a replacement for meat. Whereas what I found in India, that it was a true celebration of food that wasn't meat. It wasn't replacing meat. It was just beautiful, beautiful food, and you didn't, it wasn't trying to replace anything, but you're just the flavor, and it wasn't burning your mouth away. It was just so full of flavor. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's on my list to return. It's beautiful.
Yeah. You should come to the northern part of India, which is where I stay.
Yeah.
And the north, I mean, I'm biased towards it, but the south, the people in the south are going to say that, hey, our food is better than yours. There's always a little tussle between the people in the south and the people in the north, but the food generally in the entire part of the country is one of the things that India has to offer.
Yeah, I found so. I just, fell in love with it. It was just, flavors, beautiful. So I will definitely. So as much as I don't talk about my yoga so much, I talk a lot about running, but I do yoga probably as much as I run. So I absolutely love it. Yeah, I find it just helps with everything.
Are you also going to be there at the Global Excel Summit in Feb?
I think so. I'm in London that weekend. I haven't got my tickets yet, so I'm hoping so. Are you coming across?
Yes, I will be. I just booked my tickets 2 weeks ago.
Ah, brilliant. I might catch. And Mark, you'll be there, won't you?
I'll be there.
Giles will be there.
Mark will be OG.
And Wyn?
No, I'm not doing much traveling. Well, I am. When is it?
February, beginning of February.
February, no.
4th, 5th, and 6th.
Okay. Yeah. I'm in the UK for 5 days at the start of January, but that's it. We should just explain where Giles is. We haven't even missed him. We haven't even mentioned him once.
Oh my goodness, 31 minutes. So yes, hopefully I should be there.
He'd be devastated. So he's ended up sort of bagsying a presentation spot. He's actually a presenter at the World Excel Championships in Vegas.
Oh, nice.
I think it's sort of somebody. I think was he
Someone
saying that John Akampura had?
Yeah, it was poorly.
John Akampura had dropped out or something, so he'd kindly sort of nominated himself and got in there somehow. So so keep an eye out for Giles on ESPN live. What's the prize money up to now? Does anybody know?
60K, I guess. 60 grand.
Is it?
I think so.
Awesome.
I text him, and he was on the shots. He drank the whiskey. I think he'd finished the first one. So I texted him in the morning. So I think he said it was quite challenging to do, but I'm sure he'll tell us all about it.
Awesome. And then for me, not too much news really. I've just discovered, public service announcement to anybody heading to the UK from Australia. You now need to pay for a visa to go to the UK, which is fair play, because if you've ever come to Australia from the UK, you've always had to pay for a visa. But the other way around, you never did. So just got caught out by that this week. So there you are, tip done. And the other one was, what was the techie news? SQL databases in Fabric.
Yes.
Which is, again, I think I should be excited about it, but I'm not sure why. So I've got to dig into it more to find out more about it.
I've read a little bit about it, but I'm more interested in semantic link labs and Python at the moment. So I will get that way. Yeah, I did a user group in Manchester, and my own user group talking about Python. Have you explored Python yet, anyone?
Not really.
I have, but outside the environment of Excel, there was just a hobby. I picked it up about 2 years ago. Did some coding around that, learned a bit, but then I dropped it off.
There's just too much, right?
Yeah, it does get to that point.
It's like Power Query. M.
Yeah. Just learning those sorts of languages.
For Power BI, it's really useful because you can do using the libraries that Michael Kowalski has written. It gives you so much power over what you can do with all of your data sets and your reporting. So it's like a Swiss Stanley knife that you pull in, and you can use Python to do so much within the Fabric environment. So it's really interesting. But it's like you said, there's so many things that you have to learn or are coming out. It's what you, and I always find as well, it's if you can use it, if it's helpful in whatever your work is or your passion is outside of work, that tends to drive you forward to learn.
Can I ask Chandeep a question about one of his other hobbies? How is walking on your hands going?
Oh.
So I'm able to take 4 or 5 steps, but then balancing beyond that is difficult because then I tend to fall. So I need more core strength to be able to walk for like 25 feet, 50 feet on my hands. So right now the distance is about 4 or 5 feet, and then I fall off. So from not being able to stand on my hands to standing on the hands to now walking, it's like good progression, but it takes a lot of time. And I just practice like 2 days a week. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
I've tried headstands in yoga, and that's hard enough, let alone handstands and walking.
In yoga, I believe you use your elbows to get inverted and then stand. So that's a lot of support of your entire elbow. But then if you just have to stand on your palms, it's a lot of you have to balance a lot of through your fingers and your glutes and your core. Yeah.
And why? Why did you take that off?
Yeah, why and how?
So this was about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. I went to a gym and I saw somebody doing that in a CrossFit gym. And I got so fascinated, and I just said in that moment that I want to learn how to do that. And that's it. And that's literally it. And then for many, many months, I didn't pursue it. And then I said that if I have to do it, I'm never going to be able to watch a YouTube video and try to do it myself. Never. That day is never going to come in my life. So I might as well hire a coach. So back in the day, I was in Dubai and I hired a coach, and she helped me progress to a certain level. And then when I moved back to India, I then got in touch with another coach. And then since then, for the last 1 year or so, he's been helping me 2 times a week get to the position where I am at the moment. Funny enough, I knew that Mark is going to ask me that.
Why?
Because he did ask me that back in Bulgaria as well. How's your handstand going?
I think it's fascinating, that's all.
I do.
Yeah, it's different.
So I said that, you know what? The next time I meet Mark, this might be in February, and he might ask me to do it, show me the handstand or a handstand walk. So I have to at least to be able to walk a few steps just to show it to him. So I've told my coach we have time until February, and we have to work really hard to at least make it presentable.
Now imagine if I don't ask you, you'll be so disappointed.
No, I'm going to be okay with that.
No, he will ask, because I'm fascinated now. So do you have to do training outside of the training you do with your coach? Because that is a huge amount of core strength, and like you say, and the alignment of your hands and your arms and everything to get it. So do you do extra training outside, or?
So 2 days a week, I exclusively train for gymnastics. And that's the only training that I have. It's about 90 minutes, but I've been doing it consistently for a very, very long period of time. So that accumulates. If I miss it, I also tend to go back a couple of weeks where I've lost the muscle-mind connection of how did I get myself in that inverted position, but then I kind of get back to it. So I try not to miss that training, but it's typically, I do nothing beyond that 90 minutes, 2 days in a week. That's it.
So no other training, walking or running or swimming or yoga or anything?
Okay, sure. So that's a lot of, so you tend to mimic being inverted in several different ways when you're not really inverted. So you put your feet on a box and then you do a pike
I
as
see.
if you're inverted. And then you can also wall walk yourself to the next to the wall and then be inverted, although the wall is supporting you, but then you're straight flat out to the wall, parallel to the wall. That's one way to go about it. And off late, what I've tried to do is I get these mats from the gym outside and I spread them out. And now I'm just trying to remove the fear of me falling on the floor. So I try to take a few steps and I fall. And then since I fall on the mat, it's okay. I don't get hurt that much. And then I try again, then I try again. So a large part of it is also removing the fear that you typically have. Like I'm not like a 10-year-old boy who doesn't really care if he falls. So I have to be a bit cautious about that. So yeah, a lot of that is also removing your fear that you're not going to fall. And then trying different things with the bands, resistance bands and things like that. So there are several things that we end up doing as well. Just mimicking what is it being like inverted.
I did my first few headstands, so I could do headstands. So I understand the fear, because when you're up like that and you've got your neck, you know, it is really scary. But it's so good for you being inverted, isn't it?
That's right. And it's the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that how quickly the blood flow from your entire body comes to your brain, and then it starts to ache. I mean, you're not able to stand properly after that. So you also have to get habituated to that, like being inverted for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And typically this exercise of hand walk is in CrossFit. So you would do a move, maybe like a couple of squats, you would do something, and then the fourth exercise is going to be, now that you're fatigued, okay, let's just do handstand walk.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to do it in fatigue, but yeah.
Which makes sense, because if you've done all the squats and everything, all your blood's going to be in the lower half of your body. So then you get inverted and it rests that. But then you've got to be strong enough in your core to be an upper body.
That too. And then when you're just generally fatigued, you've lifted some weight on the shoulders and then you have to walk through the shoulders. That's just like another thing altogether. So yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it right now. It's just
like we look forward to seeing the recording of that. You in front of Mark clapping you along. Go. That'd be awesome.
That would be brilliant. It's fascinating.
All right, folks, let's get into question of the week. Here we go. Let's do the little.
We're doing well. 40 minutes.
It's the question of the week. It's the question. It's the question. It's the question of the week.
All right, question of the week. What is your show-off wow factor sort of presentation demo example that you do if you're sort of trying to show your skills in Excel or Power BI? Who wants to kick off?
Can I go last? I want to go last.
Sure. All right. Well, Mark, go on in.
So the one that I like is where what you have is you have your data. So it's normally in some accounting data, which is a trial balance or a general ledger, and then you simply download, or you already have that downloaded, because in a demo you generally don't have an accounting system to work with. You save that into a folder, and you go into Excel and you click one button, and it takes all of that data. It refreshes your Power Query, it updates your balance sheet, your cash flow, your P&L, your commentary. It copies all of that onto a PowerPoint presentation that then puts inside a PDF, and then it attaches it to an email with an email to your boss going, here's the updated budget deck. And it all takes like 15 seconds to achieve all of that. And you click it and people are like, oh, I can't believe you can do that. And you're like, yeah. You come to my training course, I'll show you how we do that.
Nice.
So that's the one. That's the one that kind of, that it just blows people's mind that is even possible. That once you've got your data in one click, that's all it takes, and suddenly everything just flows through and updates. And and you can the things around copying and pasting images and things onto PowerPoint and updating those decks, and the fact that if you're happy with bland commentary, Excel can write some bland commentary for you. Using some text formulas and things. So if you're happy with that, you can do that, and it all comes through, and you go, "Da-da! Here's my updated budget deck." Took me 15 seconds.
Nice.
Nice.
Very good.
Mm.
What about you, Chandeep? I'm sure we've got a few. You've probably got a couple of others up your sleeve, Mark. Have you potentially?
I've got. I mean, that's the key one. I've got a few others, but I'll let.
Yeah.
I'll
We'll
let
go
Chandeep
round.
win.
I've got a couple. Chandeep, what have you got?
If Mark wouldn't have said about that combined data, I would have picked that up for sure, because a lot of people still know Excel, and they're pretty comfortable with Excel. So you teach them Excel and you want to show them, okay, I've got some interesting stuff for you. Then obviously combined data from multiple Excel files is just one trick that just amazes everybody. Yeah. That also happens to be my most watched YouTube video. Other than that, I believe that if I'm just doing an Excel training session, a pure play Excel training session, and I have to hook the audiences in the first 5 minutes or so, then I'm going to start with autofilter. Because a lot of people know how to apply a filter, and they would just generally hit a shortcut or use the mouse to go to the menu bar and then apply the filter. But a lot of people don't know the autofilter, which is just like selecting a cell and then applying the filter. So I'm going to start with that and then hook the audiences that, hey, I've got a keyboard shortcut and I can select a cell and I can apply a filter. So that the first few minutes of the training is just about that. And now that I've got the audiences hooked up, maybe I can just then move on to the more boring parts of the training session.
It is a case of just capturing that imagination, though, isn't it? Because people think they know Excel. That's the issue. And if you can just surprise them with something. My one sort of goes back to the consolidating files. I've got 10 500,000 row CSV files, put them in a folder, consolidate them, hook it up to a calendar table, which is a lookup table, another dimension table, and that's 70 million VLOOKUPs replaced, and then produce a 3D map using Power Maps. And it's just like, this is what Excel can do now. And then people are like, how long's this been here? How new is this? I've been doing the same demo for 10 years and I'm still like impressing people with it. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
It's good. What about yours, Sue?
Mine's, various Power BI reports when you show people, what Power BI can do. But the bit, I've been thinking about this quite a lot, this question, because obviously I can do Power BI and I show the reports, etc. But I find it's a bit difficult, because sometimes for me, the most important thing is that the numbers are right, the data refreshes, and it's the data model. And data models are so boring to look at that you can't, I go into places or businesses or consult, and they go, look at this report, and this is amazing Power BI report. They can do this, and it's from a CSV file, but it's, how do you make, look, this data model is all, there's no bidirectional, it all works, the measures calculate the right number, the refreshes work, it doesn't take forever, it's solid, and so I struggle with the question quite a lot, because
Power BI's already got a bit of a wow factor anyway.
It has. I mean,
in terms of
just
the interaction between the visuals and stuff.
If I'm doing a session, I usually start with just showing. I use my Garmin data for the demos, and I usually start by showing the map and some of the new KPI cards, etc.
Tool tips, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but when I was thinking deeper about it, I was thinking, but actually, it's a bit false, really, because it's the model and the numbers, and I think that was my. Go on. Sorry.
With the model, I think, for me, it's that statement that, look, this is potentially 100 million VLOOKUP formulas you don't have to write, just with this little line, drag and drop.
Yeah, that's right.
This is like, people go, what? And you go, all those formulas you just have to drag down. You never have to update it. It just works. It's just, right. So, it's pretty cool. My other one for, sorry, go on, Chandeep.
Sorry, I wanted to ask another question, but I'll ask after you're done.
Oh, okay. So my in Excel on the sheet, on the grid, as it were, is the stock history function with a quick stock history for exchange rates for the last year. Right click, analyze chart, line chart, and you've got a 1 year line chart of exchange rates in about 12 seconds, from start to finish. And people just still aren't aware that whole data sort of type thing is in there in Excel as well. So that's another one.
Interesting. The other thing that happens a lot in India is that the financial year is not the same as calendar year in India. So we don't start our accounting from January. We started from April and carried on until the March of next year. So every single time anybody wants to pick up Q1, they're going to manually pick up April, May, and June in the date column, and that's going to be their Q1. So the one thing that I also tend to do is that I teach people, which is like 2 or 3, like combination of 2 or 3 formulas, is that I teach people that how can you customize calculations so that April, March, and April, May, and June is recognized as Q1, and the next quarter is Q2, and the next quarter is Q2, Q3, and Q4. So that is one other thing that I tend to do, but that's the middle part of the training. The question that I had, which often I ask a lot of other fellow Excel instructors, is that, what's your wow factor to end the training session? And I'll tell you the reason why I'm asking it, because I was reading this book from, I think the name of the book is Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert. And then he says in the book that he talks about happiness and other things in the book, but there's one point that I could relate to the training session, is that no matter how many boring topics have you touched on in the training session, but if you actually leave people on a very, very high note in the training session, like you leave them on a very high note, you are going to get raving feedback about the session, no matter how much drudgery they have to go through in the training session for whatever that might be. So I always tend to think that if I'm doing a physical or an online session, how could I leave on a very high note? And that's the question that I have for everybody.
Oh,
yeah. I can go. So for me, what I try and finish off, whatever the example was at the start, which I try to wow them with, my high note at the end is the fact that they've just achieved that by themselves and having developed that over that session. So therefore, it's not necessarily I'm demonstrating anything, but they're demonstrating it to themselves as to what they've picked up and learned throughout that. So my plan with that is always to make people feel the fact that what they thought was impossible at the start turns out it's possible by the end. So that's the way I approach it, rather than me trying to demonstrate something which won't make them feel good. But hopefully them doing it does make them feel good. Okay.
How about you, Wyn?
Yeah, for me, so the Power BI training is where I'm at most of the time now. I just always end on the aquarium visual. People love it. It's just awesome. So, because people find it hilarious, and it's just like they've been learning all this stuff, and their brains are quite tired because 2 days of Power BI is quite tiring. And then you just show them, just drag that in, add the aquarium visual, turn it to sharks, and you just get a really good reaction. It's a feel-good finish. It's a nice way of finishing on it without sort of
interesting,
exhausting them anymore. Get a good laugh.
So I'm slightly different, Chandeep, because I don't train really. I train a little bit, but most of my work is as a developer.
Sure.
But what I tend to do is similar to Mark. I structure whatever sessions I'm delivering with an introduction to what I'm going to be delivering, and then I always finish by going back and just summarizing. It's the same as Mark. This is what I said I would do. This is what we've done, and to finish in that way. So it's slightly different, but it's interesting.
Sure. I'm going to tell you what I do, and that might be something that if you want to implement in your sessions, you can. So no matter how tired people are after the training session, like they have gone through a 2-day Power BI training session, they have learned DAX, they've learned Power Query. It's anyways overwhelming to retain all of that knowledge. We tend to play a game in the end of the session. And the game, so I physically want the adrenaline of the people to go up, like really up. They should be excited. So we tend to play a game, and I've gotten some prize for them. Now, the prize could be as simple as a bunch of chocolates. It doesn't matter. It is a prize, and you're going to get it in front of everybody. And then, so let's just say that we just finished a Power Query training, which was about 2 days. So I'm going to run a timer on the screen, which is, let's say, 20 minutes. And I'm going to give you a question, and you have to build a query for that, and which is going to involve all of the things that you have learned in the session. So if statements, merging queries, all of the things that you have just done in the session. And people don't play individually. I group them into teams. And you have to take a look at the reaction and the adrenaline and the excitement that people show to win those little chocolates that I have. And it just cannot match the level of learning that you've had in the session. Once people finish the game and they won the chocolates, it just felt like they have come out of sauna or some massage or something, that they're super energized, like, oh my God, this was next level altogether. So we just tend to play these games. Now, I've done this for Power BI training sessions, DAX training sessions, Power Query training sessions. I've got a bunch of games, a bunch of questions that I put it out as games, and then people play and solve these games. So these are easy enough. I want to challenge them a little beyond the capacity of the training, but not too much that people are not able to solve it. So there's a competition that we do, and people enjoy it a lot. So that's what I've been doing it for a long time, and it's been working out well.
And it's nice because they're together. Yeah, sorry, they're together working. So no one's on the spot then.
No, obviously. So it's too much to expect from people that now that you've gone to a 2-day training session, you are on your own, solve this question. It's not going to work like that. People are going to get stuck. So if I have a batch of 15 people, I'm going to split them into teams of 3. And then people are going to be in groups, and then they will start to play a game. And I will set up the timer on the screen. I will really make this as if they were in a live show or some competition or something or the other. And I don't announce that at the start of the training. It just comes. So people are just taken aback. Oh, now I have to do it. And all of their tiredness or whatever just vanishes away. So
I like that a lot.
It's good.
Yeah. Thank you for the feedback.
I did it was two half days, and the whole 2 half days, it was all about Power Query, but the 2 half days were just challenges throughout the whole thing. That's what they wanted. They're like, we want some of this interactive. So literally it would be like, you teach the first bit, you might spend 5-10 minutes teaching something, and then you'd give them, they're in teams and there's points, and then they go through these challenges, and then over time they build up these skills. And even if one team finishes first and one team is struggling, like, well, you go and help them, and then they get to help other people, which means that they then deepen their knowledge. And it worked out really well in terms of that. It reminds me of because I play guitar. When I first learned, you can get these books which are progressive studies, where you have it's like you learn a piece, and then you learn the next piece and the next piece, and they're designed that each piece slowly progresses with your skill. So I had this kind of in mind, that you start off with something really easy, you give them a small bit more, and then you keep stepping up until by the end they're completing challenges that are actually quite difficult. And if you just taught them using examples, they would struggle with it. But as soon as they can play with it, and actually once they make mistakes and realize they can go back and start all over again, and errors, suddenly no one's scared of making an error, because everyone knows how to go back and fix it. So I think those challenges work out really well. So I might use that idea of throwing in challenges more often.
Yeah. I love that idea, Mark.
I also trigger the emotions of people. So I'm just going to say, hey guys, just 25 minutes remaining. Come on, buck up. And then 20 minutes remaining, last 15 minutes remaining, last 5 minutes remaining. Come on. And I could just literally feel people like panting and just trying to just solve it somehow. And I leave the training at that note, and I say that this is exactly how you have to approach your problems as well. Get into teams, because it's going to be too hard for you to solve these problems on your own, struggling with formulas on your own. So if you just get into teams and pick up small projects to be able to solve it, I think you will conquer a lot more than just struggling by yourselves. And then that's the high note of my training sessions, and it's been working out good.
Nice tactics. Very good. There were a few others on LinkedIn as well, so let me just read out a couple of these people's. There was Miles, who said it's got to be unpivot in Power Query, just to show off what's possible. You just got to start with Power Query, right? game, set, and match. You just win people over. For me, column from examples, just doing age bucketing. That's my favorite one. Age bucketing.
When you talk about unpivoting, do people even know that the data is pivoted or the word is unpivoting? Like I've seen that people don't even know the word unpivot.
No. Yeah. And the word pivot doesn't really mean anything to
that's
them.
right.
Yeah.
They're going to come up with the data is not right. I want to fix my data, or I want to transpose it. That's what a lot of people use. But it's very rare that people know the word unpivot.
Correct. Yeah. And you also get a mixed reaction when you show that one, because there's the people who know how painful it was for them when their data was wrong. And this is just glorious that they can just instantly see themselves saving loads of hassle. And other people who've either never considered it or just never had the problem. It's like, well, that's nice. The data is now long rather than wide, but big wow. But the people who have suffered with it and tried and built macros to fix this or crazy index formulas and stuff, they're just like, oh my God, when did this happen? How long has this been here? And then you tell them 10 years and then they cry a little bit.
I get that from Control T. When you're working with people, I'm working with customers and we're looking at stuff, and you press Control T, and then you know,
what's this?
It's crazy.
It is
totally
so surprising that on one side we have all of this AI and like the most sophisticated stuff of data. And on the other side, we are still teaching people how to write some count if, countif, VLOOKUP functions as well.
Yeah.
It's so surprising to me.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's such a mix.
And a lot of people are on this side of the tail, which they don't know how to work with data.
Yeah, which I think will come into our main topic shortly. So we'll come back to that thought. On the, we're actually going to get to our main topic, not even within the first hour. It's brilliant. I've just got to shout out a couple more people on LinkedIn. So a lot of people said dynamic arrays is their show off piece now because people aren't aware of them. So that was Enrico and I think Doug and a few others. And then Neville mentioned about the data types, stock and geography, those sorts of things. Yeah, they're all good. Dynamic arrays are just, people still aren't aware of those. You know, just the fact that this formula just spills across everywhere. It's just bonkers.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sue, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, but it goes back to Chandeep's point. Control T. I use Control T, which is stuff. It's people. I think you either are working with data or you're working with Excel, and they're almost like two separate streams. And it's when you get someone from Excel that can then see what you can do with it to manage data. That's when the big wow factor comes in for me.
So I think this sort of segues nicely into the main topic, which is sort of how do you transition people, or how do you teach people when they move from Excel to Power BI? What's the big hurdle? What's the challenge there? And especially from a DAX point of view as well, DAX and data modeling. So what have people found is the real sort of sticking point in people's brains? What are your thoughts, Chandeep?
Sure. I think if anybody has been making a lot of reports in Excel using VLOOKUP and pivot tables, VLOOKUP is definitely one of the pain points that people have. Like, I have to do a table mapping or a column mapping from multiple data sets, and I have to make my table fat to add as many columns as I would want. And then and only then I can put that into a pivot table, because pivot table just accepts one source of data. That has been the mindset a lot of people have. Now, when I start teaching people Power BI, it has changed in the last few years, and now I don't talk about Power Query first. I talk about data modeling first. So generally, I will also kind of fall back on the previous question, which is where I generally would use a bold statement like, I'm going to show you a trick that you will never use VLOOKUP again in your life. And then I will show them that, or I would rather give them an exercise, and I would say that, hey, here is my sales table, which has just probably got the product ID, which doesn't have any of the dimensions of the products, What if I ask you to make a data set or a pivot table or a report that includes the class of the product or the name of the product? How are you going to do that? And obviously people understand VLOOKUPs. They're going to say that, hey, I'm going to write a VLOOKUP, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And that's how I'm going to get it done. So then I start to take that knowledge that people already have the understanding of VLOOKUP, and I teach them how to just load the data, clean data into Power BI, clean products table into Power BI and link it. And then once people start to see that, hey, I could just now drag and drop columns from the products table and have any calculation or measures filtered off my sales table, that's a very, very big eye opener for them. Now I show them the model and I say that, hey guys, this is the heart and you have to do whatever to get to this. And your data could be in different shapes, different formats. It could be cross-tabulated. It could be multiple files, split in different files, whatever that might be. This is what you need to be able to build for your reports to start function. So once people understand that no matter what I do in Power Query, I have to shape the data so that I'm able to build that one-to-many relationship, that actually drives the point home that people are trying to chase. Because if I teach Power Query first, then people think about Power Query in isolation. People don't think that the aim of manipulating and transforming the data is to be able to make that star schema. So I start with star schema first. And then I talk about that, okay, now that you've understood this, this is what we're trying to attempt to build, no matter what shape your data is in. It could be multiple PDFs broken into multiple files, could be spread across multiple sheets, files, whatever that might be, but this is what we're trying to build. So that's how I start, and that's where from there on, we get into DAX and Power Query and other kind of stuff.
Yeah. Good approach. What about you, Mark or Sue or Mark? Do you want to go?
I can go. So the challenge I find is that if you're coming from Excel into Power BI or Power Pivot, is that the biggest challenge is people's understanding of how people's understanding of how calculation works and the idea of filter context. Because people just build pivot tables and they don't care about what's underneath or how it works. It just happens. And actually they get that error message that pops up that says you can't build a pivot table from this, and then they swear a bit and then they click some buttons and they fudge it and it works, and then they celebrate. So normally what I start with trying to show people, so we just have a table, a simple table. And then I talk about how each cell in a pivot table is actually calculated. And I'll say this cell, imagine in the background, a pivot table, it's filtering this, it's adding this up. You said you want the sum. So at the bottom of at this point, I've already taught tables, by the way. I've got a sum at the bottom. That's the value that's picked up. And then that repeats for every single item going forward. So the first thing to do is to understand a pivot table in terms of filter context, because that's just that in pivot tables, we don't talk about filter context, but that's exactly what it is in Excel. And then once we've got that understanding of filter context, people can then start building like single table models or single table visuals and items in Power BI. You can then add, you say about how clicking on something, it filters, that's the same as clicking that slicer. And so you add it up that way. Now, I often struggle with teaching how calculate works, because suddenly people understand it, and then you get to the calculate function, and you're like, you've got your filter context. You can now remove all of that and start all over again. So now I try and teach that in a way of, okay, I've got my filter context in my table. Now imagine I wanted to show something else. What steps would you go through? Well, you'd have to unfilter your table, then apply a new filter. And I'm like, the calculate or this process here is effectively unfiltering your table and then refiltering it for whatever you've got. So now I actually go through the process of having an Excel table and using that to describe what's happening in the background, so that then people can understand how those formulas work. And I mean, I don't go anything in terms of DAX. There's nothing. I don't cover anything that's massively deep. We get to a calculate, and that's about as far as we go in terms of the training which I cover. Anything that involves anything more detailed, we don't cover that, because obviously as soon as you get more detailed, then my whole scenario of using a table just becomes a nightmare, because you now need a table that has like 1 billion columns, and it then just falls apart. But in terms of the basic understanding, I think actually having a table in Excel that you talk through, this is what's happening for every cell, for every item, I think that helps people to see how data really works and how filter context works.
I'm going to give you a trick, Mark, once everybody's finished to explain calculate. It's just helped me a lot, so maybe I'll just share it with you. Wyn, would you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so for me, it's the big leap is the way that you go from formulas that you're typing on the grid, where you're selecting data on the grid. Everything's very visual, and you're seeing everything happen in Excel. And then you've got to go to Power BI, where you're having to think about how your data is structured to start with before you can write any formulas, or otherwise you just get in really horrible mess. Classic examples are people just loading monthly columns or a table for every year and all this sort of stuff. So you're already starting off in a bit of a bad spot. But even when you got your data right and all clean and all organized, you're then having to write a formula in the formula bar with no reference. You're not seeing what you're selecting. It's all conceptual. And that's where I think Mark's approach, and I have to do this as well, actually having a table sometimes, and even writing a sum formula against a column in an Excel table, it looks identical to DAX, square brackets, column names, right. And people really get their head around it. I've done a few demos in the past as well, where I've done fancy stuff with the aggregate function, because then when you hide the rows, the aggregate function, you can say ignore the values. So then your totals change in a quite a nice way with things like that. But it's just getting that concept around everything's a filter. And this is what I was really late to the understanding, having read Rob Colley's book and talking about calculate and saying it was like sum ifs. And I actually think that sent me off down a wrong path, because only after a while I went, look, everything's just about filters with this. You've got a table, you've got a column, and you're just filtering it either physically, and the row of a matrix is the row labels are filters. The legend of a chart is a filter. A slicer is a filter. The side panel is a filter. And then you write the calculate function, which is the change filter function, which then can, within the formula itself, can apply change override filters. So as soon as you start to picture in your brain this table getting filtered in the background, for me, it was a bit of a leap forward. It took me like probably a year before I even started thinking about it that way. So yeah, that's sort of my approach with it. So what about you, Sue?
Well, I'm a huge Tableau Editor fan, and the reason I love Tableau Editor, and before I discovered Tableau Editor, I used Analyze with Excel a lot. So whenever I was writing DAX measures to validate them without the filter context, I would always attach Excel to my model so that I could see that the question, that I was getting the right number, and then I could then look at the filters. So when I put it into a visual, I could then look and see what visuals were then filtering my measure. And I've come to the conclusion that generally you have the flexibility to be able to write a DAX measure to answer a question, and how your report page, whichever report page that you're creating to answer the question, you have to think quite carefully about what DAX measure you're going to use and what's going to filter it and what's going to apply to it. So it's about being, to me, it's quite specific about the DAX that you use. And I use measure branching quite a lot, where I create the general measure and then I branch from one to the other. But so that's sort of what I did previously. And then Tableau Editor, and Tableau Editor for me is just visualizes everything. So I create my measure and I've got my column, my tables, and I filter. So exactly like you said, Mark, you have your table, and if I want to calculate the number of activities that are running, I filter the table on that, which then gives me, so I can validate, because I'm just continually validating. But I'm moving more and more into using calculate less, and using variable tables within my DAX measures to create the variable table, and then to actually create some of the DAX from that. And I like Kerbal. So Kerbal, she does 25 days of DAX. So I like her. I like working through her challenges, and I'm working through them without using Calculate, because Calculate can sometimes, it adds the syntax sugar, and it can make it quite complex for you to get your head around it. And quite often, most of my measures are, can be time intelligence measures, and I prefer an offset. Rather than use the time intelligence functions, I much prefer date offsets. It's just more straightforward for me.
So, Sue, just a question on that. So the method you've mentioned there at the end, is that the same method that Greg Dexler uses?
Yeah,
now,
Greg
do you know of any resources or books that specifically focus on that technique?
I think his
most
cookbook
books tend to focus on Calculate, don't they?
Yeah, so Greg's, as far as my understanding is, Greg is writing a book right now on it, and Brian, I can pop the links in the show recording and give it to Wyn, etc. But Brian Julius, who is ex-Enterprise DNA and is just tremendously brilliant, he is going through Ruth's 25 days of DAX and is putting everything into a no Calculate. And also when Ruth does her sessions, she does at the end of the week, she'll do a video, and her Power BI report is set up as a table. So each question has a page which has got a table on it, and you do exactly that. You pull in your fields and you create your table, and then from that table you aggregate or you average or whatever it is you do to get your result. And so I always explain to people, that's all we're doing is we're filtering and we're aggregating. That's all we're doing when we're looking at that Power BI and DAX. And that's just why it sort of comes back to before, it's your data model. If your data model is rubbish, your DAX is horrendous. So, get your data model as simple as you can.
Sure.
That's mine, but I can give you the links, and the challenges are fabulous.
I think the cookbook that Greg has on Power BI, I think Power BI cookbook or something.
Yeah.
Most of the DAX that he has written there is most like using the iterator functions, filter, sumx, to create a virtual table and then iterate every single row of that, and then create a measure or something, which is a better approach than just calculate, because the hardest part of the calculate is not writing one filter, but writing a couple of filters and figuring out, are the filters itself clashing with one another or not?
Yes.
That is the hardest part in calculate. Because
so
if the filters that you have written, they clash with one another, you're going to get some weird results.
Yeah, definitely. And it's where you place them. Is it after the calculate or before the calculate? And then it's trying to understand exactly that, Chandeep. What is the precedence? Which has precedence over each other? And it's I've done all the advanced DAX courses, and it still gives me nightmares. So anything that does, but that's why you validate.
That's right. Speaking of calculate, the approach that I use, in case you want to teach that, Mark, in your sessions, is that in the middle of the session, I'm going to come to a problem, which is where ideally I would want to use calculate, and we are stuck. And I will throw that problem at people, that the natural progression of the training has been such that we are now at a stage where I want to use calculate and we are stuck. That's where I take a break and I say to people, okay, I'll just start a random conversation that people believe had nothing to do with calculate. So I'm going to ask a question like, who's your superhero? And people are going to come up with things like some local superhero in India, some Batman, some Iron Man, somebody. Like, they're just going to get relieved of the tension that is being built up in the session. And then people are in a good mood then. I said, okay, what I'm going to speak now will actually matter in your understanding of the calculate function. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a pivot table. In the pivot table, I will have a channel, and one of the channel is also used as a filter in the calculate function. Now, obviously, those are clashing. Pivot table also has a channel, and the calculate function also has a channel. And then before I drag the function off to the pivot table, I'm going to ask people a question. Okay, what do you think the answer is going to be? Because the calculate will remove the filters from everybody and just repeat the same answer across. Some people are going to say that you will have blank cells and you'll just get the value and things like that. And when I drag it, you're going to see that the value is same across all the channels because the calculate has replaced the filter. Now I say that, okay, now that you understand filter context, imagine the pivot table is trying to apply the filter on the data on that particular column and trying to apply a filter of this channel, whatever channel. But there's this Superman standing, which is your calculate function, and the calculate doesn't like that. So if your pivot table is fighting with your superhero, who do you think is going to win? And obviously people say, oh, my superhero is going to win. And that's exactly why your superhero will always replace any filters that are going to come off your visuals.
I like that.
So,
nice.
so these stories just help.
Yeah. Just makes it a bit more lighthearted.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more sort of quirky things with DAX as well, and then there are in Excel formulas, like Sue mentioned as well. You know, sort of syntax sugar and all these other things. You know, it's just there's little traps and tricks and things that just bang your head against the wall. Whereas Excel, even if you do get to a stage where you don't understand a formula, there's always a nice hack or some sort of workaround that you can do with another couple of formulas on the side, and then you can have one formula underneath the other one that doesn't match the formula above. You know, you really do respect how awesome and flexible Excel is.
Yeah.
But then how dangerous it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say to people, I have a love-hate with Excel. I absolutely love it because you can do anything that you want with it and it just does it. But as an input into BI, oh no. No.
The thing with people coming off from Excel backgrounds is that it's too much to imagine. So you could have done a step in Power Query to summarize your data or not to summarize your data, or to apply a data type or not to apply a data type. And that is going to impact your calculation in DAX maybe 2 hours from now, once you've done cleansing your data. That's problem number one. So you are actually building a pipeline of data flowing from one gateway to the other that impacts your calculation. People don't realize that. The other problem is that everybody who works with Excel for reporting has gotten very comfortable by pressing the F2 key. Okay, this is where the value is coming from. This is where the value is coming from. I can go to that cell. Even if it doesn't matches, I can just type the numbers. I'm good to go. So these isolated approaches where people have been able to validate the result by just pressing the F2 and taking a look at what the number is gives a lot of comfort to people. Now, even if you press F2 on DAX, you see the same code. You don't see the references of the values. You see the same code. So if you don't know how and the thing is working, you keep staring at the code and the code stares back at you. That's it. That's all that happens. So one is this layer of invisibility of DAX, which is a big problem. And then people don't realize that the action that you have taken while transforming your data is actually going to impact your DAX.
Yeah. Huge. And I think that's quite nice because in a lot of the examples that we're doing in these 25 days of DAX, you set it up as variables so you can see each result, so it becomes more visible. But that variable structuring is just absolute godsend. Even that, the name of it, you know, because I remember I was doing a Kahoot quiz or something about variables, and it was, you know, what's the answer going to be, and I didn't realize that the variable is constant. It shouldn't be called variable. It should be called constant because once you've put it in, it's not going to change. So, you know, even that is a bit misleading. But it's, you know, but having the ability to break it down makes
it's too much to imagine for people, like too much. Like, so in a simple context, you can understand the filter context for a sum function. But once you have layers of variables, filters being applied, virtual tables being created. On top of that, you layer calculation groups on top of that. Oh my God, it becomes too much to imagine for people.
Yeah.
Can I challenge Sue, or can I ask Sue about her understanding of variables? Because based on what you've just said, right? Well, because So my view has been that if you've got a constant, right, that's like a hard coded value that doesn't change.
Yeah.
If you've got a variable that it starts off as nothing and then it calculates it, so that's still a variable, and then it's whether it's mutable or immutable as to whether you can then change it. So I've always taken the view that if it's created through calculation, it's still a variable. If you can change it, or if you can't change it, then it's an immutable variable. But maybe I've got that understanding wrong, and maybe it doesn't matter.
And also I think it depends where how that variable is created and where you use that variable within the DAX. So
it's I think that's a semantics.
Yes. It's again, because you could call the variable at the beginning. Yeah, I would say both. But if you create the variable within part of another variable, then it will change. But
it's only because everything I create, whether it doesn't matter whether it's in Office scripts, it doesn't matter whether it's in VBA, no matter what, I just create everything as a variable, even if it's not going to change. And you always get people that look at your code and go, oh, that should be a constant.
Right.
So it's kind of it's semantics, but people care about this thing. It's like the use of if it's a variable, if it's a parameter, if it's an argument. All these things have subtly different meanings, and we tend to just throw these words around, but they do have slightly different meanings that then confuse people. So I just wanted to see what Sue thought about constants and variables and those things.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to whether you're coming into it as a programmer or whether you're coming into it as a business person. So as I always say, I'm not a programmer. I can program, but my head is more business-like. So when I see something as a variable, the first time I started using it, and then I called it, I expected it to change. And I can't remember, it was a Kahoot quiz from a few years during COVID or something that they were doing, and so many of us got it wrong because we expected it to change, and it was like, no, it's not going to change it's like if you call it the number and then you don't refer to it again. So it was a specific example, and I think it goes to with what Wyn said. It depends how and when you use it as to whether it will be your true programming use of a word constant that won't change, or whether it will change depending upon how you use it. So I haven't got a clear answer for you, Mark. I think it's a response.
I haven't got a clear answer either.
No.
So apart from sort of, doing some nice training courses and stuff, what's the, just to wrap up for the last couple of minutes here, where, I guess, Chandeep, you've already sort of said that people should start, or you think the best place to start is with that data model.
Yes.
So for an Excel user, I think I'm still happy that I'm teaching a simple table and tidying that up to get people hooked in on Power Query, because that's where people spend 90% of their time building a Power BI report, is getting the data in Power Query. But I do appreciate understanding the end goal can be very important of why you're bothering tidying this data up and getting it into a certain shape. So I do get to grips with that. What about other people's thoughts? Where do people start?
Ask a question. I won't be so I don't do a lot of training, as I train people that I work for on their data, but I don't tend to do the training like you guys do. But I do find it quite weird that some people don't go straight into BI and DAX and haven't touched the Power Query or the model. So I mean, do you find that just from some people I've spoken to, they don't touch Power Query?
So they just pull the data in from some other source that someone's provided to them, or DAX to do their data modeling type stuff. Yeah. Do come across that occasionally.
What I've generally seen in India is that there are a lot of local institutes teaching Power BI, and the easiest thing that people get hooked on are the visuals. Obviously,
yes,
they will create a perfect data set with all the columns in Excel, load it in Power Query, load it in data model, and just skip Power Query, skip modeling. There's just one table let's just start building visuals. Your Power BI training is over. Give me the money. That's it.
Yeah. I've seen that quite a lot. People show me this amazing. You look at so and so who's working for us. They've done this amazing report, and I look at it and I go, well, ooh.
There's still a number of people who apply for jobs with our company who, still use implicit measures and things like this. And we're a professional, BI development company, and they've got 4 or 5 years worth of experience on their CV, but they're still using implicit measures. They haven't used a calendar table. And, because Microsoft have made it simple, right? They've gone, bring in a table, drag your value in, it creates an implicit measure. It creates the date hierarchy for you as long as you've got a calendar year, you're happy with that. You don't need a financial year. So they've made it easy, which is the right thing to do to get people, people in, get people started without being, which is perfectly sensible. But then people do sort of take advantage of that, I think, and not push themselves a bit further, or training companies just show that.
I believe most people are going to think that that's where Power BI ends. That's it.
Yes.
And this goes, look at this. This goes back to my original point about question of the week, when I said it's difficult for me to say what's the wow, because to me, it always comes back to your data model. Full circle.
I think to answer Wyn's question, and to go back to Sue's point as well, the training we do, we've got a 7-step or 7 phases, 7 steps that you go through, but we always start in the middle, which is data, because you need to know what data is, how it's structured, how it works. Then we go back and go, right, how do we get to data? And then we talk about how we manage inputs, how we transform data. And then once you've got data, you can then go out the other side as to how you calculate, which then involves the data modeling piece and the DAX piece, or it could be formulas in Excel. But equally, the data is the key point. That's the bit that's in the middle, and one thing comes in. So you need to understand what the goal is. A bit like Chandeep mentioned in star schema, only I'm going a step back and saying that you need to understand what data is. Then from data, you can then create your star schema. But that's the key point. Because if people don't understand what data is and how it's structured, then everything else after that is irrelevant. So you've got to get that piece in the middle, which is the most boring piece, right? And you talk about normalization and a whole load of other stuff.
Yeah, it's not boring.
But you talk about it, and people they look at you as if, obviously. But yet, when it comes to what they actually do, they're not doing it. But when you explain it, they're like, "Well, why would I do anything else?" You're like, "Well, you're doing something else every single day. You're not doing this, or else you wouldn't have these problems." So that's the heart for me. The heart is data. A bit like Chandeep, he's got his heart is, I said, star schema. I've got this data, and it's then star schema. So that's the key bit to get to.
Awesome. All right. Any closing thoughts or anything from anybody, or is that a good point to wrap up?
Good point.
Had a lovely chat.
Oh my goodness, it's late. We've been chatting.
I'm going to be in so much trouble. Well past
have you had your dinner? Have you had your dinner?
I have, but some of the family haven't. So it'll be interesting. But I'll blame Chandeep. It's all right. We'll send him over to you for some lovely northern Indian food.
Definitely.
You promised us. You did invite us. I think I heard that. You invited us all to stay.
Yes, I did too. That's what I read it into. So it's just set him. So how many handstands are you going to do for Excel days? How many targets? So you're on 4 or 5 now, you said.
Well, I'd rather not set a target, because in the anxiety of showing it off to people, I might just not be able to do even one.
Oh.
So even if I'm able to do whatever I'm doing at the moment, I think that's going to be a good win.
Awesome.
That's good.
My biggest concern is that Chandeep's going to say, I'll challenge him, how many can you do? And he'll do his 4 or 5, and then he'll say, Mark, how many can you do? And literally, I'll be like trying to do like a handstand like a 3-year-old, and just falling over, and actually everyone will be laughing at me and just going, Chandeep's amazing, Mark, you're rubbish. So I might have to stay quiet just so that he doesn't push it back on me, because that's a risk.
No, you're gonna get hurt if you do it without practice. You're gonna get hurt really badly. So I would not ask you to do that.
That's good.
Brilliant. Perfect. All right. At the end of if people listen to the podcast version, I'm going to add a little soundtrack in honor of Chandeep as well on the podcast, just to play him out.
Thank you.
The Suno.com AI site that I use to create music and stuff, it is not good at Indian, Bhangra, Bollywood. I went sort of down that line. It is not good at that. So I've not done that. It's awful. So I've gone for a more of a mellow sort of Ibiza chill out phase, because you seem like quite a chill out guy, Chandeep.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we've gone for that theme. So
That's fine. That's fine.
No worries. Thank you again for coming on the show, and congratulations
Thank you. Yes.
again for the
Thank you.
subscribers. And we
Thank you.
shall chat to everybody again in a couple of weeks.
Okie dokie.
All right. Thanks, Chandeep.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.